Bill McMurdo here, and just an update on how things are going with our Arise Scotland project, movement, whatever God has for it. But we have our weekly gatherings on a Friday night, 7:30 p.m. in the Glasgow Revival Centre. And we had our second one just last night. And what a time. Great time in God's presence. Wonderful playing by Emma McKaig, and then of course a great message by Stevie McKaig. And we welcomed Bert McKaig from previously Pray for Scotland and other great works in God, and a well-known statesman in the church, and somebody who is a father to both church and nation, somebody we really greatly admire, respect, just love the guy. Stevie and I started up Arise Scotland, and we are in dialogue with people and leaders to get on board with it. We're happy to for people to come on board with us and get involved in the work, but we just felt it was appropriate to get Bert involved, and thankfully he had been feeling the leading himself from the Lord. So Bert is joining us in the leadership team, the ministry team, and it was great to have him last night close out the meeting and bring a short but vital message. And Bert will be featuring very, very much in future days. In fact, I think next week there's going to be a message from Bert. You know, just a little bit of background or a little bit of explanation about our Arise Scotland meetings. We're not going out our way to do something different for different sake, but we do want something different. We don't just want the same old. Church as usual, business as usual, meetings as usual is gone. And I believe that although I think much of what we're facing right now is an attack upon the church, an attempt to suppress the church, the hand of God is also discernible in what's going on, because I think God is closing down a lot of the old wineskin stuff. People walking in the old paradigms, functioning in that business as usual mentality, not having an urgency for God to move, not having an urgency for revival or awakening or an outpouring, and for just a longing for God to move, but really just buzzing along, quite happily doing their own thing. God has just shut a lot of that down. And it's quite alarming to see that so many churches are still closed when they can open now. But, there's a God element to that. I think there's a God-ordained part of that. And I'm just going to be blunt and say God is going to close a lot of stuff down that shouldn't be happening now. Some churches might reopen, but they're going to have to reopen in a whole new paradigm and be a new wineskin, or they'll just get shut down. I'm going to say this to you. You read the book of Revelation, the letters to the 7 churches of Asia, you'll understand that God is in the business of shutting churches down that produce nothing. If there's no fruit, God shuts it down. So God has no qualms about that. He's no sentiment about that. I pastor a church that's over 150 years old, the ministry, the movement, but I've said all along, God is no sentimental notion of ministries that have quite a bit of history and tradition. He'll happily shut them down if they're no longer producing fruit, and if nobody's around who cares that they're no longer producing fruit. So God's in the business of closing churches. And it's a big part of Jesus' ministry in Revelation. You see, a lot of us lament the closing of churches, but I believe that God is happy to close churches when they no longer produce fruit, when they're no longer salt and light, when they're no longer functioning in the way that he intended them to. So God's doing a new thing, and we have to get on board or get off the train. So anyway, exciting times. Arise Scotland. We're believing God for a Holy Ghost and fire outpouring. We're believing God to move. We're believing that Scotland's a land of destiny. We're believing for that Jean Darnall vision to come to pass, and that Scotland would be a place that the great end time revival begins in all seriousness. In other words, it really begins properly. And she had that vision from the north of Scotland, and then of course light coming down, flooding the UK, and then going over into mainland Europe. And that's why we had to come out of the EU I believe, so that we could be a sending nation, a nation that's the Albion of old, the Holy Island, that a nation and a land set apart for the purpose of God, so that we can then evangelize to the other nations. So very exciting to be part of it. We started Arise Scotland with that end in view, and of course with the whole concept of being a new paradigm, a new wineskin, that was no longer about dealing with God and these matters, important matters, cosmic matters, from earth to heaven, but dealing from heaven to earth. And we're all excited. We're reading about Rees Howells and so on, because he pioneered that idea, that concept, that vision. So get on board, folks. Go to arisescotland.com, see what we're all about. If you're local, and even if you're not, you're welcome to come to our Friday night meetings and plug into what we're doing. The Lord bless you real good, and speak to you quite soon. God bless.